The Run Lift Mom podcast is brought to you by my efforts as a Zia Active independent representative and partners Hello Woofy for social media, Red H Nutrition, and Audible. Audible is the newest of this lineup, and if you want to try Audible free, all you've got to do is visit audibletrial.com/runliftmom. Why is this week's Saturday with Susie episode so long? Well, for two reasons. Number one, the normal episode this week was definitely a lot shorter. And then number two, this is a re-release from season 1, episode 16. I fear some of my new listeners might have missed it. And you guys, you can. Jenn Andrews is fantastic. So I'm giving her to you once more, and I know you'll be inspired. Welcome to the Run Lift Mom podcast, where we're talking about running, lifting, and momming, not necessarily in that order. Today I have Jenn Andrews, mother of two who used to run 3 to 5 miles several days a week, probably like a lot of listeners of this show. Guys, her life was turned upside down when a pedicurist found a pea-sized tumor on her right foot, which led to a diagnosis of sarcoma, which is a rare form of cancer for where there's no known cure. Doctors told Jenn that amputation was her best option to become cancer-free, and she did it. This is a powerful story of a courageous mother who is making her trial a testimony. Without further ado, I present to you Jenn Andrews. All right, I am so excited to have Jenn Andrews. Jenn, welcome to the Run Lift Mom podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So Jenn, I want you to take us to that moment in 2013 when your journey that we're going to talk about today really began.
Yeah. So in 2013, I was pregnant with my daughter. She's now 5 years old, and she is my first child. And I was getting a pedicure with my mom and my stepsister. And the woman, the nail tech, who was giving my pedicure, started massaging my feet, and she noticed a pea-sized nodule on my right foot. And she asked me if I had ever noticed it before, and I didn't. I never noticed it. And you couldn't even see it unless you really pressed down hard on my foot.
Like just pea size? Was it like a pimple or something?
No, it literally, you couldn't see it if it was, if you were just looking down at my foot, but if you applied pressure to the top of my foot, it was almost like a little pebble underneath. It was it was kind of dense.
Okay.
And it just didn't really pronounce itself unless you really applied the pressure. So I went home and I had a family physician in my, a physician in my family who's a general surgeon look at it. And he said, "Oh, this is nothing to worry about. This is probably a ganglion cyst, which is just a benign cyst, nothing to worry about, nothing cancerous, nothing harmful. They're just kind of a nuisance and they tend to pop up on hands and feet." So after that, I really didn't think much of it, and it never really changed. And then when I got pregnant again in 2014, my kids are 14 months apart. During my second pregnancy is when it went from the size of a pea to the size of a golf ball on top of my foot.
Whoa, same area, same place?
Same place, same nodule, just the same thing just grew. So from there, I knew obviously I wanted to have it looked at. Again, ganglion cysts are supposed to be able to grow in size. It wasn't super alarming. So I waited until after I had my second child because I was having a C-section again. I had C-sections with both of my kids. And obviously anybody who's been through the process, it's an 8-week healing process. Yeah. And so I knew obviously having foot surgery, I would need to be able to physically carry myself on crutches. So I wanted to wait to have any kind of procedure done until I would be able to do that. So fast forward, I had my son and I had a scan of my foot done, and I went to a dermatologist, and the scans were very unclear. So he sent me to an orthopedic oncologist. As soon as I heard the word oncologist, obviously, your mind goes to a million places, and he didn't even say anything about cancer. He just said, I'm sending you to an orthopedic oncologist, and that was it. So I remember leaving his office, bawling my eyes out, not knowing what was going on. And I went and met with this amazing physician who, I mean, now I can say he saved my life, but he's amazing. And so I went, I had a biopsy done, and all the results came back benign. But because of where it was on my foot, it wasn't painful, but it was just kind of awkward. And obviously it was the size of a golf ball. So it was causing issues with different types of shoes and that sort of thing. So we decided I needed to have it removed anyway.
And meanwhile, I want to time out here because your children are 14 months apart. So meanwhile, you've got, I'm just trying to picture what life is like for you at this point. You've got toddler, newborn, and they're sending you to an oncologist. I want to make sure people are hearing that.
So not only was it toddler, newborn, oncologist, it was toddler, newborn. I just lost my 8-year insurance career to a restructure. After 3 rounds of restructures, my region, along with 3 others, was eliminated the week before I was scheduled for my second C-section. And like you, I ended up joining a network marketing company that was amazing because not only did it allow me to focus on health and wellness, but I was able to replace my corporate income and be home with my kids. So all of that was happening in the process of a cancer diagnosis that we didn't know was cancer yet, 2 new young children. Yeah, it was a lot at that time.
Well, and you probably didn't know that network marketing gig was going to replace your full-time income at the time. This must have been just, I mean, when you look back, is it hands down the most insane time of your life?
Yes. I mean, honestly, I feel like the last 4 years have just been the most insane time of my life just because of the way that things have played out. Or maybe even 5 years at this point. But it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, I actually survived all of this. So
okay, keep going. So this oncologist, obviously we know now, I mean, he saved your life. So you met with him, and then what from there?
So I met with him. We had the biopsies done. Everything came back benign. He was like this, everything came back benign, but we probably should remove this because of where it is and how large it is. So I agreed. We said, let's do it. So on December 3rd, 2014, I had the mass removed. And then I went back 10 days later for what I thought was just to check my incision, possibly take stitches out, no big deal. So I had my 3-month-old and my 17-month-old with me. And he told me that the biopsy did not show all the results. And when my mass went to pathology, post-surgery, it actually showed to be sarcoma. And it was a very funky, strange, weird type of sarcoma. And if you don't know what sarcoma is a rare type of cancer that has no known cure at this time.
Wow.
So I'm sitting in the office, and if you've ever had any kind of cancer diagnosis yourself or somebody that is close to you, it's just one of those things where it's almost like an outer body experience. I mean, you're listening and you're watching their mouths move, but you just, you're so just emotionally drained in that moment that you just can't absorb all the information. So I just remember sitting there and seeing his mouth move, and I just I couldn't take in everything he was saying. But I remember saying, okay, well, what if I don't want to have to deal with this again? What are my options? And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to go in, we're going to have another surgery to carve out a clean margin, even though I really don't want to do that, but it is what it is. And he looked at me and said, if you don't want to have to worry about this again, you're going to have to amputate your right foot. And I just remember at that moment, the fear was stronger than anything I had ever felt before. And so I just remember thinking, how can this be my life? But at that point, we didn't know when we did the surgery that we were doing a quote unquote cancer surgery. So we could have gotten clean margins, or we may not have. And so choosing to be watched at that time was not unreasonable. And so I chose to be watched. And the type of sarcoma that I had, it was low grade, it was slow growing. So if it was going to do anything, I was going to have time to do something about it.
Okay.
which put me at an advantage. So if it was going to spread anywhere, it would go to my lungs. So every 3 months, the first year, I had my foot scanned and my lungs. And then second year, it was every 6 months. And then the third year was when I could go annual. And then January 2nd of 2018 is when I went for my scans and they showed change on my foot. But we assumed that if it was going to come back, it would come back the same way it started, a small spot, and then it would grow. But unfortunately for me, it came back as a 3 millimeter layer over my entire right foot. And so there was nothing that could be done to save it. So we decided to do a punch biopsy instead of a needle biopsy because obviously the first time around it didn't show the cancer cells, right? So we did that. Everything came back. It confirmed that my sarcoma was in fact back. But because of how it came back and where it was located, there was no room for a clean margin. I mean, take your fingers. If you run them over your hand or run them over the top of your foot, what do you feel? There's nothing there. It's skin, it's bone, it's tendon. So there was no going in. It's not like if it was in your thigh or your arm, there's just nothing there. So from there, I got several other opinions at, very well-known medical facilities all over the country. And the consensus was the same, that I had no other option. So if I wanted to prevent it from spreading to my lungs and taking my life in the end, then I was going to have to lose my right foot. And I remember my doctor kind of redirecting me because he knew how gut-wrenching the idea of losing my foot was, especially because I'm very active and I have 2 small kids and I like to run and I like to work out. And the thought of losing that mobility was just horrendous to me. And I just remember him saying, if you want to be there to watch your kids grow up, if you want to watch them graduate high school, if you want to dance with your kids at their weddings, you're going to do this. And from there, I knew I was going to do it. And it was an easy decision to make, but it was really, really tough to accept.
I mean, you've got to compliment that physician for really painting the picture for you. Our mobility, it's something that we can enjoy every single day, especially for us runners, right? It's a gift that we're able to, pun intended, exercise every day. But when he's painting a picture like that, do you want to dance at the wedding? I'm sure it stopped you in your tracks.
I mean, absolutely. I feel like, the idea of losing my mobility, I just remember when we were talking about it and I said, am I ever going to walk again? And I just remember tears streaming down my face asking this. And he said, walk again. I hope you're going to run again. And I remember when he said it and I just it was almost like I couldn't accept that could be a thing afterwards. I didn't know anyone who had an amputation. I didn't know anyone personally who was missing a limb and what their process was. So for me, this was just total uncharted territory. And so as I obviously started to research on my own and kind of navigate through it, I made 2 goals for myself before my operation. One was that I was going to walk unassisted without crutches before my birthday, which my surgery was on March 12th. My birthday was May 12th. And I walked unassisted without crutches on May 10th.
Wow. So you gave yourself 2 months.
Yep. I gave myself 2 months. But one thing that I always like to tell people, because I feel like even though my situation was very unfortunate, I feel like my process moved along a lot faster than most. And I say that based on feedback my physicians have given me, my prosthetist has given me, and then also just talking with other amputees. So I was fitted for a prosthesis at 4 weeks. Or 4.5 weeks, which is pretty early. Most people don't get fitted that early. So my healing was going well. Now that doesn't have anything to do with the amount of pain I was in or the amount of phantom pain I was experiencing. That's a whole other conversation, a whole other ballgame. But as far as my actual incision healing, it was doing really well, which is why I was allowed to be fitted that early. So yes, so I was able to walk 8.5 weeks post-op without crutches. But when I say walk, another thing that I kind of need to preface is that this walking was in short spurts. I think in my mind, I had this unrealistic expectation that I was going to put this new leg on and be back to my normal self. And that's not how it works. So you definitely have to learn to build up a tolerance. You have to learn how to balance. You have to learn how to carry yourself in a whole new way. I mean, from the trunk down, you're using your body in a whole new capacity. And so you just kind of have to learn how to navigate that.
Wow. And I mentioned this in the intro, you were very open with, it straight up went viral. So you did a Facebook Live before you were going into surgery. If folks look up hashtag move for Jenn or hashtag move because you can, they're going to see post after post after post, folks supporting you, like during the time of your surgery, as well as since. What made you decide? That's a pretty private, intimate thing that you're going through. What made you decide to kind of open up and be public about it?
So there's a few things. So for me personally, going through this process, it was so emotionally draining for me, especially before the surgery, because the fear was just so unreal. And I'm very open about my whole journey because I feel like there's so many different parts of it that even though not everybody goes through amputation like I did, but there are plenty of people who go through cancer and a cancer surgery, and it's terrifying and it's the same emotion. And I think for me, I was literally before, normally I'm like a very outgoing, happy, positive person. And then after my diagnosis and knowing that I was going to be losing my foot, I literally was surviving on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. And I'm open about that because I feel like that's a topic that is not talked about enough, and too many people feel alone when they don't need to feel alone. And so
what I hear you saying is, because I can hear the enthusiasm in your voice straight up. I think anybody that's listening to this is like, man, this girl's like sunshine and flowers. But you're saying that it's like, hey, I got here with a lot of help, to include pharmaceuticals, and it sounds like counseling and that kind of thing.
I didn't have counseling, but I did have, obviously, yes, I did have antidepressants going through this because how could I not, right? It was just one of those things where I'm a very like happy-go-lucky, active person. And then I became this recluse version of myself that could barely get off the couch. But once I had my surgery, it was almost like that fog was lifted. And going back to your question about kind of why I was so open about my whole entire journey. Well, one, it was really difficult for me to repeat my story over and over, even to my very close circle of friends and family, because it was so emotionally draining. So for me, I started blogging, and it was my way of letting everybody know where I was with only having to say it once.
Yes.
And it just became easier for me. And so I started blogging about it. And then the week before my surgery on March 7th, just a couple of weeks before, I felt compelled to do this Facebook Live. And literally it was with the intention of going out to friends and family. Like I said, I'm a health and wellness coach. I help people obviously improve their health and, encourage people to be active. And so in my message, it was just to remind people that mobility is a gift and to get out and move because you can, and to exercise in your favorite form in my honor and in honor of everybody who wants to but couldn't on my surgery date. And what I expected to go out to a few friends and family ended up being watched by 86,000 people. And so the Move for Jenn hashtag was created. And then I remember waking up from my surgery in the hospital, and my husband's like, get your phone, get your phone, get your phone. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, get your phone. And we pull up my phone, and literally there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of posts. I just remember sitting in the hospital bed, just like tears streaming down for all these people who cared enough to get out and really hear my message and allow it to affect them emotionally and to feel compelled to get out and move. I had people who messaged me who said, I have dealt with severe depression and I haven't gotten off the couch in a year, and I took my dog on a walk and I feel the best I felt in a really long time. Thank you so much for inspiring me to do that. Stuff like that, you just can't. It's just the emotion behind it. It's just, you can't. And I had friends and family and strangers all over, from New Zealand to Alaska to, I'm trying to think of all the countries, London, South America. All over the US. I had people from everywhere, from walking your dog to going on a run to running a marathon to little kids in dance classes holding signs that say Move for Jenn, who didn't even know me. It was just so touching.
That'll lift a fog. And something I want to point out, Jenn, obviously you are doing the work that God needs you in as a wellness coach, because is it so wellness coach that in the moment of like your need, you asked folks to celebrate themselves with movement. I want to point that out. Like, it takes a very unselfish, giving person to do that. Like, you get one big ask, and you ask folks to celebrate like movement and their body's ability to do something great.
I just feel like it's something that we all take for granted. And I feel like it's just something that just seems like it should just be there. And then when it's taken away, it's just such an eye opener of what a gift it is. And I feel like my experience kind of showed everybody in my network that that truly is a gift.
Wow. Yes. Yes. What a cool. So, okay. So then 2 months, you're able to walk, maybe not like your mind's eye of being this graceful, long endurance hike up a mountain,
Right.
but you're able to walk unassisted in 2 months.
Yes.
Talk to me. I know, wow. I mean, folks, I'm going to put in the show notes just some of the articles about you, Jenn. I hope that that's okay so they can see the details. But you have since done a 5K, you're back running and in Orange Theory, and you're training currently for an even longer race. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So again, before my surgery, how I said I made the two goals. One was to walk unassisted before my birthday, and the other was to run a 5K before the end of the year. So I had in my mind that I was going to meet this goal. And so I obviously wasn't able to get a blade right away because, like I said, you have to build up the tolerance. But several months after, I was actually gifted a running blade by a prosthetic company called Endolite. And they gifted a blade to me, which was the most incredible gift. And I remember the first time I got to actually use it and be fitted for it. So one thing that folks probably don't realize is that it's not just a blade. So you have a socket that is made like, when you break your leg and they put a cast on you, they do that to your residual limb. So that way they can make a carbon fiber socket for your foot or whatever you're using attaches to that. So I had that made, and then the blade was given to me, and I was able to start running. I want to say it was like 7 weeks before the race I started training.
Now, Jenn, do people usually, so obviously you've got a prosthetic like for that unassisted walk and everything. What is this tacky? I mean, does insurance typically cover all of the things you need to do the activities you want, or is this a lot of out-of-pocket expense?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question because it is so, it's something that people just don't realize. So insurance will cover one basic prosthetic, and that is to be able to walk from point A to point B.
So you can't say I want a running blade.
So you can't just say I want a running blade. But what they do is they ask you a series of questions and they classify you based on your life. So your career, your home life, your activity level, everything. So I was classified as the highest active person that you can be. Okay. And that allowed me to, I guess, get a quote unquote walking foot that does a little bit more and has a little bit more, I guess you could say torque to it, because I can it just has better movement, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because there are some that literally are like having a block under you and it's just up, down, but mine has it does kind of roll like a foot would roll. So, but it's not made to go out on a race and run.
Yeah.
And that's why the blade is separate. So anything extra is completely out of pocket on you. So a running blade, a swimming foot, a waterproof leg, anything like that is completely out of pocket. And these prosthetics can range anywhere between $5,000 and $50,000 plus, depending on what kind you get and what kind you need. And that's not including the socket that needs to be made for that as well, because those are usually between $5,000 and $10,000 also, which is why once I realized what a gap this was, and how there's probably so many people out there who want to be active, who used to be active, who can't be active because they can't afford to be active. And that killed me. So my husband and I started a foundation, which we can go more into in a little bit, but called the Move for Jenn Foundation. And what we do is we bring awareness to sarcoma, which is the rare type of cancer that I had, but there's many types of sarcoma. I just had a subtype of it. And then from there, we also are funding grants for activewear prosthetics to help fund running blades for people who want to get back active after losing a limb to sarcoma or other affiliated diseases.
That is So it's so great. And it's very providential that you've gone through a lot to be able to do this type of work. But what a blessing that is for those that want to be active, but then there's that cost barrier.
Right. And that kills me. I mean, nobody should be denied being able to get out and run or take their dog on a run or run with their kids or sign up for a 5K or a 10K or a whatever they want to do. I mean, that kills me. And so I'm really hoping that our foundation can make a difference and kind of fill that gap. And we were actually able to give our first grant in December to a local firefighter who was 20 years old, who lost his leg to osteosarcoma, which is in your bone, this past May, and we were able to surprise him, and it was the biggest gift. I mean, for me, just being able to give that made my entire year. And it just I'm not this person who's like everything happens for a reason. I don't believe that, but I do feel like being able to do work like this and be able to gift people back their mobility shows purpose in what happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, congratulations on being able to give that gift to that young firefighter.
Thank you.
I'm pivoting again. Talk to me though a little bit about your own fitness goals. So now you've got your foundation going, you've got your blade. So you can be that runner that you were prior to 2013. What are you doing with it?
Yeah, so I actually ran. So if you're in North Carolina or you're in the Charlotte area, there's an amazing foundation local called the Isabella Santos Foundation, and they focus on children's cancer, pediatric cancer. And they had a race in September that I actually ran with a team of 137 people, and we ran the entire 5K. I ran it without stopping, and I completed the race, and it was probably one of the best moments of my entire life and probably the most accomplished I feel like I've ever felt. So I ended up running that full 5K 6.5 months post-op and only training for 7 weeks. And after that race, I thought, okay, well, if I did this in 7 weeks, I can definitely do more. So I'm training right now for the Cooper River Bridge Run in Charleston, which is the first weekend in April. And I'm really excited for that.
The Bridge Run. So
yes.
I'm smiling ear to ear right now because the Bridge Run, you guys, this is not as terrain goes, right? As a terrain goes for a road race, it's not the easiest one that you can do. Jen, you love a good challenge, don't you?
I do. I'm like, give me a goal and watch me do it. Because I think for me, it's all a mind game. I just know for me, it's almost like I just need to prove to myself that I can do it. And it just each time I get to kind of hit a new goal and check a new mark off, it just proves to myself that there really are no limits and there really are no barriers. And it just helps me feel more like me.
Oh, that is so cool. So, you're training for that. Can you just tell me a little bit? I mean, have you had ups and downs in this training?
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about if for somebody, well, back up for a sec. So for me, being a below the knee amputee on the right side, I use 25% more energy to do everyday things and running and exercising than somebody with two legs. So right there, it's harder, right?
Yeah.
But for me, think about if you take a couple of days off and then from working out and then you go back, I mean, you know how you feel. You're like, oh, this is just so tough, right?
Right.
So for me, it's probably times 10. So I was in physical therapy for quite some time. I am taking a little bit of a break from it right now. I'm planning on going back to it, but I am in Orange Theory several times a week. And then I'm also doing Pure Barre, which was recommended. I did Pure Barre before, but my physical therapist pushed it even more because it focuses on maxing out different muscle groups. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of helps me with kind of rebuilding some of that muscle. Because right now for me, I'm really working on trying to rebuild the muscle in my right leg, especially in my quad. So it's a combination of kind of training to build my endurance back, build up the tolerance to be able to take the pounding on my leg from running, but also rebuilding the muscle and kind of getting myself back, because I'm not all the way back. I feel like the majority of my physical therapy that I spent this year, I was so focused on being able to complete that 5K and run again, and walk again, that I wasn't as focused on rebuilding, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that was just now I'm kind of at a point where I'm kind of shifting gears, and it's kind of more of a combination of the two.
Well, I can tell that you're approaching your fitness, with a health and longevity lens, as opposed to just getting out there and crossing things off a list. Although,
yeah,
I don't know that I've ever spoken with anyone with as much tenacity. Give me a goal and watch me do it. I can hear it in your voice. Oh,
thank you.
So, you're clearly an inspiration for everyone listening, everyone that has seen you at that 5K in the fall and that will see you in Charleston. Did you expect to have this kind of platform? What does it feel like?
No, I didn't. I honestly, I was it's crazy when you look back at what a year, right? People are like, oh, what can happen in a year? I went from being this, regular person to getting this horrendous news, to going from being this happy-go-lucky, outgoing, personable person to being this recluse, depressed version of myself, to finding myself again. But it's just one of those crazy things where I feel like the more I push myself and the more I use my story to help someone else, the more I'm okay with my situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. I feel like I'll never understand why this happened to me. I'll never be fully okay that this happened to me, but I am accepting that this is how things are. And I've realized that I can do all the same things. Sometimes I just have to find a new way to do it. And that makes it okay.
We talk on this podcast often about modeling healthy behaviors for the next generation. What an amazing thing it is for you. You have something that could be a really legit, great excuse. And instead, you're modeling for your two kids how nothing is an obstacle. What do they think of mommy with her blade?
Oh, I'm so glad that you just said that, because you just triggered my favorite story about my daughter. So my daughter had a fun run at school. And let me just preface, she is not the most athletic. She is very artsy, and my son is more my active one. He'll go on runs with me, but my daughter, she's just not that into it. So she has this fun run at school where you're supposed to run 50 laps. And I remember everybody joking oh, she's probably going to do, 10 or 12 and be done. And she finished all 50 laps. And at the end of the race, she came up to me and she said, with the biggest grin, she said, Mommy, I did all 50 laps. And you know what? I didn't give up. And I just sat back, and I remember thinking, oh my gosh, she is watching. And I remember leaving the race because it was in the middle of school, and then parents could come, and then the kids went back to class. And after she said that to me right before I left, I went in my car and I just bawled my eyes out, because I just thought, what an impression I have made on the most important little girl in my entire life. And if she got anything from that, that was more than what I could have ever expected her to absorb at 5 years old.
That is awesome. That is awesome. I'm tearing up a little bit hearing that story. What a gift for you. And you're right. They are always watching, and you, without even saying anything, look at the lesson you taught her. She did not give up. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, no, they're both such good kids. And I feel like with kids in any situation, I feel like a lot of times we underestimate how much they can understand and how well they can cope with things. And I feel like I was just as open with them as I possibly could be from the beginning, in terms they could understand. Mm-hmm. And they were very receptive. They were very helpful. And now with my situation, they don't look at people with differences any differently. They really just truly see the person. And I feel like that's one positive thing that's really come out of my situation.
Absolutely. There are folks that live a lifetime that can't do that. And your kids already can.
I know. It's crazy. I'm really proud of them.
So I want to ask, before I get into the way that I close these podcasts these days, which is a rapid fire, I want to ask you, what's next for the foundation? Because that is, like you said, one of the most important things to come out of this. What is next? Are you going to continue awarding these grants and growing awareness through the foundation? Is this a long-term thing for you?
Oh, this is definitely a long-term thing. We are in the process of doing some smaller events. We have a smaller event actually this Thursday. at Era Workshop in Charlotte. We are doing some other smaller events. Next month, we have one with Basante Pizza and some smaller things coming like that. And then we're actually planning our first 5K. We're in the works of that, and I'll be announcing details of that later on in the year.
Awesome. Well, definitely listeners of this podcast can stay tuned for that because I will help you pump that up. Are you ready to do rapid fire, Jenn Andrews?
I'm ready. Shoot them out.
All right. So now you are an inspiration. You're a wellness coach. You are an advocate. What did you want to be when you grew up, when you were little?
So this is so funny, but I used to want to be a talk show host like Ricky Lake and Oprah. But
go Ricky. Go Ricky.
But it's kind of funny because now that I've kind of shifted with things that are going, I'm in the middle of writing my first book and I'm actually focusing on doing speaking. So it's kind of funny that that's what I wanted to do originally, is be a talk show host. And now my goal is to become a speaker.
You are the most interesting woman in the world, Jenn. You are. Oh, okay. You've got 1 hour to work out. What are you doing?
Oh gosh. If I have 1 hour, I'm either at a Pure Barre class or I'm at Orange Theory, because those are my two favorite out of anything.
I love it. And I know, offline, we've spoken about the importance of tribe and those people around you. And I know you've got some good tribe in both of those places.
Yes. I'll cry talking about my people, but the support that I have through my friends and family and even people who are just acquaintances and even strangers. It's unreal. And I think that I would probably not be where I am today emotionally if it was not for these people.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful that you recognize it as well. And, I'm sure you are that person for others as well.
Thank you. I hope so.
This is the best one to end on. Can you tell us about an activewear wardrobe malfunction? Is there a time that your activewear just went wrong?
Activewear just went wrong. Let's be real. I need a good sports bra. And when you don't have one and you're running, you just feel like you're going to knock yourself out. And the other day I was at Orange Theory with a girlfriend of mine and both of us are running on the treadmill and we thought we really got to do better next time.
Well, this is the Run Lift Mom, many of whom are perhaps nursing. So, we know the importance of a good bra for sure.
For sure.
Jenn, I have so enjoyed speaking with you. We will put all the important stuff in the show notes of this podcast. Thank you so much for coming on Run Lift Mom.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Awesome.
Have a good night.
Two things have happened since the original airing of this episode in March 2019. Number one, Jenn earned that finish line at the Cooper River Bridge Run 10K in Charleston, South Carolina, as well as multiple race finishes. The second thing that happened, this episode really forged a friendship between Jenn and I have been inspired by the work that her brand new nonprofit has done. That's right, they're a 501c3 foundation, and they, in their first year, raised over 6 figures and funded 7 sarcoma survivors. It is amazing. I want you to check them out. It's moveforjenn.org. Jenn has 2 N's, so moveforjenn.org. What they do is they help amputees get activity-specific prosthetics that gets them back to the activities that they enjoyed prior to amputation. At the time of this publishing, I asked Jenn, hey, what are you guys focused on right now? And she said, we're gearing up to fund a couple of people for running blades. Cool, right? Get this, those couple of people, it's a 10-year-old boy and a 10-year-old girl. I am amazed by the work that they're doing, and if you want to support this cause, I want you to consider marking your calendar now for the 2nd annual Pajamas All Day event in Charlotte, North Carolina, November 2020. Definitely more details to come, but this race last year raised over $90,000 alone. Amazing. It gives you a reason to get out there and move and wear your PJs all day. Thank you so much, Jenn, not only for coming on the podcast originally, but also for giving me permission to re-air your show. I know that it's inspiring to many. And until I get into your earpiece again, remember, for while bodily training is of some value, godliness is of value in every way, as it holds promise for the present life and also for the life to come. That's from 1 Timothy 4:8, and this has been the Run Lift Mom podcast. Hey, Run Lift Mom listeners, you know I'm the mom of 4 kids under age 5, and therefore I am always looking for ways to work smart, not hard. Anchor is the smartest way to make a podcast. Let me tell you why. First of all, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, but Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you, so then it can be heard on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole lot more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It is quite literally everything you need all in one place. And y'all, it's free. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, I've got Katie Danger with Red H Nutrition. Katie, you know I am a runner first and foremost. I'm doing anywhere from 20 to 40 miles per week. I'm closer to 40 than I am 30. Tell me about Super Flexi.
Super Flexi is great for anybody who is active, has a few aches and pains in their joint and tissues, and wants to combat that with a all-in-one full-strength joint and tissue support. It's got turmeric, it's got glucosamine and chondroitin, it's got collagen type 2. So what you're looking at here is a full and total spectrum support for any inflammation you have with your joints and tissues. It's going to help you improve your range of motion, and you're going to just feel better doing what you love.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you don't have to be a runner to benefit from Super Flexi.
No, it doesn't matter what you do. In fact, even if you only work out 3 times a day, like cardio, maybe you're just a walker, if you want to feel better and you want your joints and tissues to move the way you want them to, Super Flexi is essential.
Thank you for listening to the Run Lift Mom podcast. What started as a passion project in February 2019 now has over 60,000 downloads and over 400 listens each day. It is amazing, and I know it is because of you, dear listener. I want to thank you for your ratings, reviews, and subscriptions. All you have to do is take a screenshot of your rating or your subscription. If you've already done it, clearly this is fair game. Take a screenshot and go to newreleasewednesday.com. That's newreleasewednesday.com. That's going to put you in a drawing for a free Zaya Active outfit, top and bottom piece, valued at over $100. newreleasewednesday.com. Show me where you have rated and subscribed, and I'm going to get you in that drawing. Thank you so much for making this passion project possible.